And this one is a really interesting competitive card game because it also throws in a splash of dexterity. The way this game works is that players are all going to be starting with each of their meeples on a single tavern card located in the center of the table. But the goal of this game is to try and get as many of your colored meeples into the tavern by the end of the game because that's going to be scoring you the most amount of victory points. The interesting thing here is that this tavern is going to be growing throughout the game as players add more cards into it. But there are a bunch of different cards offered in this game, and they all have different rules with how you can add them onto the tavern. Some of them you can just place onto the tavern quite easily, while others you might have to slide, throw, or drop into position, and they only remain as part of the tavern if they are still touching the tavern after you do that action. This means that if you're required to throw the card but you miss the tavern completely, that card's just going to get discarded and it's going to be moving on to the next player's turn. But a nice little detail that adds a lot of variety into this game is that there are a bunch of different scenario cards that you can use to play this game, and they're each going to be dictating which cards are included in that particular game and how many of each of the players are going to get. These can also introduce some different rules changes and variants as well that can change up the game even beyond the cards that you're using. But like I said, players are going to be taking turns choosing a card from their hand to play and try to add to the tavern according to its particular placement rules. And if it doesn't end up touching the tavern in any way, then that card's just going to be discarded. It's going to be moving on to the next player's turn. But if it does actually end up touching the tavern, then you also get to use the special ability of that card. And these can have all sorts of different effects like adding or removing meeples from the tavern, which can often also require flicking, but they could also allow you to move meeples around or even allow you to build a floor by stacking a card on top of a bunch of other meeples. If any meeples are knocked out of the tavern at any point during this process, then they are removed from play and returned to their owners. But the game continues like this until players have played all of their cards, and then you're going to be adding up the total victory points based on the meeples that players still have in play. All the meeples are just worth a victory point, but they're worth an additional victory point for each floor that you're able to get them on top of. But just keep in mind that the higher a stack of cards is, the easier it is to potentially fall. But the player with the most victory points at the end of all that wins the game, and if you want to check this one out, I will have it linked in the description down below.